Greetings loyal subscribers and honoured guests. It's the penultimate episode of Covertape Cast Zzapped Season 2 this week. After the previous issue only had a couple of things for us to check out, we're back up to the standard 4 games this time. Inside the mag there is a review of Space Gun, which is a port of a Taito light gun arcade shooter that had received quite a bit of attention in the pages of Zzapped already. Elsewhere there is a roundup of some newly released compilations, and Corky checks out the latest and greatest coin ops that might be headed to a C64 near you at some point in the future. Now though, let's get started checking out the tape. We begin with a game that many people, the staff of Zzapped magazine included, have hailed one of the greatest games ever made. That game is Paradroid, or rather the heavy metal variant of Paradroid, which tweaks a few things and speeds the whole game up a bit. I though do not hold Paradroid in as high esteem as most do, because really this is my first time actually sitting down and playing it for any amount of time. I have dabbled with it before, but found the whole thing rather baffling. It turns out that it's pretty easy to grasp once someone explains it to you though. You control a little robot called an influence device with the designation 001 written on it. This is the puniest, most basic robot in the game, but it does at least come with lasers that can take out more advanced robots if you shoot them enough times. Your goal is to hunt down and kill every last enemy robot on every floor of the ship, but you aren't going to be able to do that with firepower alone. Instead, you need to look for a robot that's more powerful than yours, but not too powerful, somewhere in the 200s, say. Then, by holding down the fire button, you can switch into transfer mode, make contact with the other robot, and initiate a minigame. If you win this minigame by activating more nodes in your colour than the enemy robot, then you transfer into it and now control the more powerful robot. You can now murder robots around your range much more easily, and can start clearing out the less advanced decks of the ship. As you get further in and encounter nastier robots, you will have to keep transferring into higher numbers in order to stand a chance against them. Your ultimate goal is to clear the entire ship, whereupon you start over in a new one. Once you get the hang of it, it gets quite addictive, and I am finally beginning to understand why people have made such a fuss over this game for all this time. Now that I know what I'm doing, I am eager to go back and play it some more, as well as the Paradroid 90 version that is on my A500 Mini. As you can imagine, the Zzapped reviewers were absolutely raving about Paradroid when it was first released. Gary Penn thought it was the best presented game I've ever seen. And Julian Rignall said the game was one of the best programs on the 64. They awarded Paradroid a score of 97% and summed it up with the classic shoot 'em up. While I'm not as smitten with the game as them, I could well find myself agreeing with them given enough time with it. The next game is a little puzzle game called Rainbow, the likes of which were fairly common in the wake of Tetris on the Game Boy. Your task here is to stack matching colours together horizontally, causing them to disappear and awarding you points. In this game, the equivalent of a Tetris is a rainbow, which involves putting a full rainbow of colours next to each other for a massive point bonus. That would take quite some planning in order to pull off though, and is something that is beyond my own skill level at present. I found the basic game rather tricky because you can't match colours vertically, they have to be horizontal to count. The game offers a couple of different variants, one where you go for points for as long as you can survive, and a time-based one where you perform as best as you can within a couple of minutes. It's an interesting concept and rather tricky. I definitely need more practice in this one before I can fully get my head around it. As I believe this was a public domain game, I can't find any reviews for it online. I think it's pretty decent, but not the most exciting game ever. Over on side B we have the third and final part of the Spy vs Spy trilogy, entitled Artic Antics. This follows a very similar formula to the previous two games, except, as you've probably guessed, the action now takes place in a snowy setting. As a result of this, you now have to watch your temperature and make sure you don't freeze to death. Being dropped into icy water or pelted with snowballs by the other spy will speed up the onset of hypothermia, but you can raise your temperature by finding an igloo and standing next to the fire for a few seconds. When I was playing Spy vs Spy 2, I thought I was finally getting the hang of things, but the AI of the computer opponent in this one seems to have a bit of a boost, because he was tracking down the briefcase and all 3 items required to launch the rocket in a scarily quick amount of time. All 3 of these Spy vs Spy games are very well made and would offer hours of hilarious gameplay with another human to play against. I think maybe the second game is my favourite overall, but they are all fairly interchangeable. The Zzapped review largely agrees with me, with the reviewers starting to get a little bit tired of the formula by this point. Gary Penn said, "I found Artic Antics less playable than its predecessors." And Jazz commented, "When it boils down to it, it's basically more of the same." They gave Spy vs Spy 3 an overall score of 75% and wrapped things up with a good game in its own right, but no advance on the previous 2 releases. Finally, there is a playable demo of Double Dragon 3, which is an arcade game that I have spent a fair amount of time with recently due to its inclusion on the Technos arcade collection on the Evercade. In its original form, Double Dragon 3 is god-awful. It has jerky animation, a horrible art style, and a woefully misjudged system where you pay more real money in order to power up your character. Compared to this, the C64 version actually feels like an improvement. It moves a lot more smoothly and the controls also respond fairly well. All that being said, I still wouldn't really recommend it over other better games. This demo is a very brief section from the first stage and it is lacking any music, which makes it feel a bit flat and uninteresting. The finished game was given a decent score of 73% in Zzapped, and they said it was a competent, fast 2-player beat-em-up, and that in itself was an achievement. So there you have it. Heavy Metal Paradroid is the winner here by far, and I would hazard to say it's one of the best games to have ever been included on one of these tapes, regardless of my lack of experience with it. The rest of the offerings are all decent, but unspectacular, I would say. Join me again in 2 weeks' time for the final episode of Covertape Chaos Zzapped this year. Season 3 will kick off at some point in early 2023, but don't worry, I do have some other Commodore 64 related content planned in the meantime. I'm going to be bringing back Compilation Station and work my way through the Codemasters Quattro releases. See you again for the finale, and in the meantime, take care.